First up on the show, South Africa's mining sector has certainly been in focus as of late, and the mining Lekgotla 2013 drawing to a close today at the Sandton Convention Centre. It was organised by the Chamber of Mines and other stakeholders, that including the National Union of Mine Workers. Joining us in studio for more on what came out when it comes to this certainly strategic dialogue is the Chamber of Mines Vice President Mike Teke. Thanks for joining us today, Mike.
Thank you.
So let's take a look at, you were chair essentially of the wrap-up today.
I was, yes.
There were so many issues that were touched upon. There were so many comments that we saw quoted in the media, the likes of Kutafani, for example, saying that the industry really needs to look at itself in the mirror right now. When it comes to this Lekgotla, what did it achieve?
Well, the first important thing is it's the strengthening of the partnership between the key stakeholders. Firstly, as you said earlier, it was organized by the Chamber of Mines, the National Union of Mine Workers, and the Department of Mineral Resources. And those three parties ensured that out of this, it's the strengthening of the partnership, number one. Number two, it's to address the critical issues that impact on our lives, as in legislation or policy making within the department, as it comes out of the Department of Mineral Resources. And out of that, it's the whole transformation agenda, ensuring that we try and accelerate in terms of our transformation agenda.
When it comes to policy, that was one of the focus areas when it comes to sessions that were being held, the direction of future mining policy in South Africa. We don't need to overstate the fact that certainty is certainly very important to investors right now. I mean, that certainly is a given, and it has been recognized, of course, by government. But when it comes to the future of mining policy, what was put on the table in terms of the direction it could take?
Well, the most important thing, as we know that the MPRDA, the Minerals Petroleum Resources Development Act, there is an amendment bill in Parliament. And out of that discussion is to ensure that those amendments, as an example, we're talking about beneficiation, is aligned to what we want to achieve as a country. And it's important, therefore, whatever policy that we adopt, the most important thing that comes out of that is certainty. That policy must provide certainty for us as local operators, and for the investor locally and internationally must provide that certainty. What
amendments are being debated right now that one needs to be aware of? I mean, you know, there's always a raft of amendments, and we don't need to get into the lesser important ones. But what are the most significant factors?
Well, the significant factor that came out now, and it's sitting on the table, is the discussion around beneficiation. In other words, the production of any mineral that comes out of this country to be beneficiated in this country. But there is more detail into that, and there's more consultation that has to take place. And within the Act itself, it is important to note that there are several sections which, if we went to, we'll need more time to go into more detail of that.
Yeah.
But the debate today was centrally, to some extent, taken by the beneficiation discussion.
How do mining companies feel about South Africa very much focused on beneficiation? We know why it's focused on beneficiation, but how do mining companies, what is the overriding comments that you hear coming through from them?
I think the most important thing to understand is that we are not opposed to beneficiation. We're not saying it shouldn't happen. I think the most important part is the consultation process that must take place and ensure that all stakeholders are taken along when you develop such policy. So the discussions are ongoing at the moment to ensure that we understand and we provide our own input as well, and ensure that the country goes forward.
So if you say that discussions need to be collaborative, do you feel that there have been up until this point, or do you feel like there are areas where you haven't been able to provide the input you would have liked to?
We are in the process of consultation at the moment as we speak, and we are talking to the Department of Mineral Resources.
Let's talk about transformation. Transformation was a focus area yesterday, I think it was.
It was, yes.
And it took on various guises, the issue of ownership, the issue of community development. So when it comes to the issue of ownership, I mean, what were the comments that came through around ownership and how that relates to transformation of the mining industry?
I think we all know that the MPRDA says to you 15% up to 2009, and 2014, 26%. And the big debate that's going on is obviously in anticipation of what happens post 2014. In other words, 1st of May 2014, when the MPRDA comes for review, number one. Number two, have we done enough in terms of ownership? Have we done enough in terms of black ownership, or bringing new players into the mining industry in terms of ownership? Yeah. But again, beyond transformation and ownership, there are other areas that are critical.
Do you think that the mines as a whole in South Africa have done enough?
We have complied mostly, but there's room for improvement. We can do better. We can accelerate. There are opportunities, and there are a lot of young players who are keen to be, that is, up-and-coming entrepreneurs who are keen to come into the mining industry. So that opportunity
So
still
on what
exists.
level would an entrepreneur come into the mining sector as a mining owner, or I mean, what levels are there available for entrepreneurs?
Well, there are entrepreneurs who are interested in owning their own mines. They will apply for prospecting rights. They will start their mines from scratch. There are those entrepreneurs who want to buy existing assets from mining companies, and they will put in bids to buy those. And there are those entrepreneurs who are not interested in mining, but they want to supply, to be suppliers or for procurement to the mining industry. So it's different types of entrepreneurs.
Yeah, but in the experience of the country to date, I mean, what have been the challenges when it comes to having small-scale miners come on board, perhaps not necessarily with a mining background, but seeing the opportunity that that's presented to them? So what are the challenges with having entrepreneurs in a sector like this that, of course, does play into economies of scale, essentially?
The first challenge is to be able to identify the opportunities where you want to participate. The second one is to understand the risk associated with that particular commodity or area that you want to play in. The biggest one is funding, where people would apply for prospecting rights. They'll have to develop those areas where they have prospecting rights, and the challenge of getting funding becomes a big one.
And I suppose, at this point in time, risk in mining is high, so potentially the funding opportunities are becoming smaller with that.
With the commodity prices where they are at the moment, they are not at their highest, and we know that we're facing challenges when it comes to costs and productivity and quite a number of difficulties. So it's not boom time at the moment.
Yeah.
It's the difficult time of the mining industry, and yes, you're right, funding becomes a challenge.
What was the overriding message that you took away when it comes to labour relations in South Africa's mining sector right now? I mean, we know that AMCU didn't come. We know that NUM, Frans Belleni, actually spoke at one of the sessions. What do you take away from this, and do you think it was a constructive engagement when it comes to trade union issues?
You need to understand that our agenda becomes different. We are concerned about growth, all of us, but the unions or labor looks after the interests of the employees. We do look after the interests of employees as well, but they would like to get salary increases that are higher. They'd like to ensure that they fight for the interests of the employees. We, at the end of the day, we have shareholders at the same time looking after the same employees. What is critical is how do we get involved in a strategic dialogue that will create a partnership so that both parties can see that going forward, what will make this mining industry thrive is growth. Yes.
Are things going to get better from here? We've got to wrap this up, but I mean, how are you feeling right now? This has been a certainly tumultuous time for South Africa.
You're asking an optimist, and I operate in the mining industry. I'm optimistic that this industry will turn around, and we will face another boom one day. We must be ready by that time. In other words, in terms of investment, in terms of our dialogue, in terms of how we communicate about productivity, work ethic, and how we treat people. Us as the mining industry, we still have a lot of work to do in terms of communities, in terms of our employees as well, and we acknowledge that.
Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
That the Chamber of Mines Vice President, Mike Teke.